Hey guys, it's Coach Bearline. We're getting ready to start your next video lesson installment. This will be video lesson 3 of Unit 1. And we'll be talking about the Second Industrial Revolution today. We'll talk about some of the benefits, causes, and we'll also talk about some of the negative benefits, or I'm sorry, some of the benefits and some of the negative conditions that are created by the Industrial Revolution. So, oil really kind of powers the second industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution was powered primarily by coal. This one by oil. So in the mid 1800s, people began to refine oil found on coastal waters for kerosene lamps. In 1859, Edwin Drake drilled for oil in Pennsylvania, starting the first commercial oil well. Very soon you had wildcatters or oil prospectors that struck oil near Beaumont, Texas, which begins the Texas oil boom. And this oil boom lasted less than 20 years, but oil still remains a big business in Texas today. The other new technology is going to be prevalent during the Second Industrial Revolution is steel. In the 1850s, the invention of the Bessemer steelmaking process made steel production cheaper and faster, and by 1910, the United States was the world's top steel producer. Steel helped transform the U.S. into a modern industrial economy. It was used to make all sorts of things, railroads, bridges, locomotives, skyscrapers, all of those things. And factories also, of course, use steel machinery to make other goods more quickly as well. During this time, you also have a massive expansion of the railroads. In fact, between 1865 and 1890, the number of track increased by fivefold, by 5 times. And the federal government actually helped this by giving land to railroad companies. Congress authorized 2 companies to build railroads to the West Coast, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific. And workers raced for 6.5 years to complete this transcontinental railroad or track that crossed the country. In May 1869, the 2 rail lines met in the Utah Territory at a place called Promontory Point. They promoted trade, created jobs, and of course helped with Western settlement. Railroads also led to the introduction of standard time. Because rail schedules couldn't accurately depend on the sun's position, you had the development of Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific Standard Time that we use today. All right, during this period, you do have the massive growth of big business. Many entrepreneurs start business, and you have the development or the growth of the capitalist laissez-faire system, in which the government had very little control or regulation over businesses. And there were huge inequalities created as a result. And many people believe this was a result of what was called social Darwinism. And they took Darwin's theories of natural selection of survival of the fittest, and they used it to explain that businesses and nations, for that matter, behave like nature as well. Only the strongest survive. So social Darwinists would have believed that, the poor were poor because they didn't have the skills or the talents necessarily to take advantage of opportunities in America. New type of business also develops during this time called the corporation. Companies need lots of capital, lots of investment to build new factories and machines and things of that nature. So they sell shares of ownership or stocks in their company. And basically, corporations will be led by a board of directors and run by corporate officers like the CEOs, CFO, whatever. Excuse me. Corporations also raise money by selling stock and could exist after the founders left. So stockholders could only lose what they invested, so this minimizes the risk of investors as well. Some of these corporations begin to form trusts that lead several companies to form as one corporation and dominate an industry. So it was kind of a type of monopoly. Mass marketing helped retailers maximize their profits, and department stores and mail order catalogs begin to revolutionize shopping. So mass marketing is a result of mass production. You have all this stuff, you got to figure out who to sell it to, so you have to create a demand in some cases. All right, so many major tycoons of the era. Four of the most famous are John D. Rockefeller of Standard Oil, Andrew Carnegie, who develops the Carnegie Steel Company that will dominate the steel industry. In 1901, he sold his company to J.P. Morgan for $480 million and retired as a philanthropist and doing charity work. Vanderbilt, Cornelius Vanderbilt was big on the railroads, and that's where you see Vanderbilt University was established because he gave much of his money to education for the public. Also, you had George Pullman, who designed sleeper cars for trains, and he made a fortune selling these cars, and he actually built his whole entire town near Chicago for his employees. However, not everybody was doing well. And in the laissez-faire climate of the time, workers were more or less victimized. Most scraped by on less than $500 per year, and yet tycoons got very, very rich. So the people at the top were benefiting greatly from this new economy, but the workers were not as much. Government became worried about the power of corporations and passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which made it illegal. Sherman Antitrust Act made it illegal to interfere with the free trade of the market, but it was very rarely enforced, very difficult to enforce. Most factory workers were European immigrants, Irish in large part. Workers often worked 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week in unhealthy conditions without paid vacation, sick time, or even compensation for injuries. Working conditions got so bad that workers began by the late 1800s to organize into what will become known as unions. The first effective major workplace union was the Knights of Labor, which campaigned for the 8-hour workday, the end of child labor, and of course equal pay for equal work in Philadelphia. Labor unions originally preferred boycotts to strikes. Rather than stopping work, they would just try to get people to stop buying those products. But soon, strikes became the most common tactic. And there are a number of famous strikes. There was the Great Railroad Strike, which was the first major rail strike and stopped trains for almost a week, caused violence, and was finally put down actually by the United States Army. So in this case, you see the Army intervening on behalf of the businesses. And of course, the Haymarket riot in Chicago was a result of a protest against police actions towards strikers. There was a strike, police came in to break the strike, and used some brutal methods to do so, and as a result there was a riot and killing 11 people and injuring over 100. In fact, most of those killed were actually police officers. Employers struck back by forcing employees to sign documents that they wouldn't join unions, and also by blacklisting people who did. Another major organization was founded by Samuel Gompers, who founded the American Federation of Labor in 1886. And the AFL was able to win wage increases and shorter work weeks for its members. However, unions suffered major setbacks in the Homestead Steel Strike, the Carnegie Steel Works in Homestead, Pennsylvania. Employees seized control of the plant. And also you had 16 people killed in the American Railway Union strike around that time as well. And also during the time, because of the urbanization as a result of industrialization, you have the growth of the major growth of cities, and along with that is the growth of public transportation. For instance, you had the first streetcars during this time. Originally they were horse-drawn, but eventually you're going to have the first cable cars built in places like San Francisco, and almost every city is going to have an electric streetcar, something called a trolley. You also during this time had the development of subways. These are underground trains basically that travel throughout the city. Boston opens the first subway line in 1897. And, of course, New York opens their line in 1904. Automobiles are also being produced ever more quickly. A German engineer named Carl Benz invents the first horseless carriage in the late 1800s, and in 1893, Charles and Frank Duryea bring the first practical American motor car. Of course, airplanes are being developed during this time. Of course, Wilbur and Orville Wright are the first to successfully fly an airplane in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, although it's going to be really decades before people figure out a useful transportation means using the airplane. Telegraphs are also widely available during this time, revolutionizing communication in the mid 1800s. Samuel Morse had invented the telegraph, obviously, which sent coded messages using what's now called Morse code across telegraph to send messages almost instantly. Alexander Graham Bell in 1876 patented the first design of the telephone, which could actually transmit voices across a line. So this grows very quickly. Within less than 25 years, more than 1 million telephones in offices and households across the country. An often underrated invention that helped further communication during this period was the invention of the typewriter. The first practical typewriter, basically, for the first time, people could type out documents pretty quickly. You didn't have to move typeset and printing presses and things of that nature. He also improved the design of the typewriter by creating a standard keyboard that still is the standard keyboard today. Of course, the most famous inventor was the Wizard of Menlo Park, the nickname for Thomas Edison, who by the time he was all said and done had over 1,000 U.S. patents. In 1876, he opened his own research laboratory in Menlo Park, New Jersey, where he hired assistants with scientific and technical expertise to think creatively and work hard. He spent hours testing, and some of their early successes was a phonograph. The first method of recording the human voice and being able to play it back, and they actually invented an early telephone transmitter as well. He's most famous, of course, for coming up with the first safe, practical electric light bulb that could be used in homes and in street lamps. He then created, basically, he installed a lighting system by creating his first power plants in the United States. And this is going to be kind of the model for what will become U.S. power plants. Like I said, he also invented a motion picture camera and a projector. And by the end of it, he holds over 1,000 U.S. patents. So you have a lot of change in the United States during this period. Not only is transportation, is business changing, but transportation, communication, and very soon you're going to see people's leisure time change dramatically. You got the motion picture coming out, the invention of the light bulb and street lamps and things like that are going to make it much easier to extend leisure activities into the evening. So all of these things are going to lead to massive change in the United States.